Do you have an actual pricing strategy for your property? If not, you could be leaving thousands on the table or even worse, scaring off bookings altogether. In today's video, we are counting down the top 7 pricing strategies to make you more money. And we can tell you that tip number 5, most hosts get completely wrong.
Hi, I'm Sarah Karakayan.
And I'm Annette Grant. And together we are
Thanks for visiting.
We've been hosting for well over a decade, welcomed tens of thousands of guests, and earned thousands of 5-star reviews.
Our portfolio continues to bring in over $1.5 million year over year, and supported not only by the industry's leading brands, but also some of the biggest media outlets.
And we're here to help you with your furnished rental.
If you are a host that has ever panicked over seeing an empty calendar while your neighbor is completely booked while you're sitting empty, this video is for you. We're going to show you how to actually look at data and compare your pricing to the market so you can stop guessing and start making decisions strategically. Tip number 1 is knowing where to find the data so you can create this strategy, okay? And did you know that Airbnb gives you this data? You can find it like your occupancy rate, your average length of stay, your average daily nightly rate, your booking window, and so much more. You've got to not only know where to find it, but then know what to do with it. So here's the thing. If you don't see insights on your hosting dashboard on Airbnb, it's because you haven't turned it on. So in your account settings, you're gonna go to Use Professional Tools. Once you opt in, you will now have access to insights, and under insights, you have access to quality, conversion rates, and so much more, because without those things, how could you possibly make decisions for your property? You simply can't. Now, if you want to go deeper, you want even more accurate information that feeds in other information like Verbo data, hotel data, then you're going to have to get yourself a dynamic pricing software. We use PriceLabs. We talk about them all the time. Go in the show notes. We've got a link for you that has a special offer to give it a try for free for the first 30 days. Tip number 2, understanding your market as an ecosystem.
Yeah.
So for example, every business most likely has a whole ecosystem. So let's take fast food, for instance. You've got McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's. Heck, they could all be on the same corner or they could be in different areas of town. Same thing happens with short-term rentals. So you really need to understand not just your city. You've got to really dive down into your neighborhood, your market, your competitive set. So for example, we're in Columbus, Ohio. So our properties, we're not going to compare them to the whole city of Columbus, Ohio. We are going to drive down to our specific market, not only our specific market, but our neighborhood and a comp set within that neighborhood. And I can tell you, this can be tricky. For instance, some of our properties are within 2 miles of very distinct, different competitive sets. We have the Ohio State University campus. We have our downtown. We have a very family-friendly neighborhood. So within those 2 miles, the pricing is wildly different.
2 miles at one of our properties.
Blocks. Oh my gosh, 2 blocks. This is how deep you need to go into your market. You need to understand your competitors. But here's the good news. The data exists for you. You just have to be willing to dig in. Now, let's say, because we get this all the time too, is, well, there's no one around me. Like I am in my own little, ecosystem, my own sphere. And here's the thing. If there wasn't demand to come stay with you, then why are you in business? Right? So, and why would people choose to come see you or to not come see you and go somewhere else? Where would they go if they don't go see you? That's your competitor, right? And so you need to dial down. And so you might have to do more work if you're in a more unique area. Right. It might not be 1 block away or a mile away. Right. Like beachfront, off beachfront, ski in, ski out. You might have to widen that net.
Right. Because it's like when people are shopping for a place to stay and they're considering your place, where else are they considering? And you know they are. They have to be. Unless you are truly like a destination, you are Insta famous, and people are traveling from all over to come see you, which if you figure that out, that's incredible. And those places do exist. And even those places look to competitors in other markets but are similar wow factors to them to understand where the ceiling could be for their pricing and where it isn't. Now, in your marketplace, once you figure out what your market is, because when people travel to those marketplaces, the people who stay in the family-friendly neighborhoods, like Annette just mentioned, may not stay in the neighboring neighborhood that is just as cute, has just many walkable places, but they don't have as many kid-friendly parks, right? So you also have to know what marketplace you have, who your actual competitors are, and who is behind that Airbnb app searching and what decisions are going on in their head. So they call that your avatar. Who is coming to stay with you? What person's brain do you have to get into and understand psychologically the decisions they make when they go shopping? Once you can piece those two things together, you can now understand whether you're losing to your competitors or losing to the market, whether you're matching your competitors in revenue for that month or winning. We call winning if you match it, okay? Because you got your fair share of the marketplace that existed for that time period. Then you can also beat the market. Let's say you had some really cool event going on or some really awesome offer, and you actually made more revenue than your competitors did. And you can find out this information. You do need a dynamic pricing software to get really deep, but even Airbnb will compare you to similar listings like we talked about in tip number 1, and understanding how you're comparing yourself to similar listings and how you're competing with them, whether you're losing or matching them, which is winning, or beating them is really crucial information for you to build out your pricing strategy as a whole. Tip number 3, create a plan for different demand levels. Here's the thing. Short-term rentals and travel in your area didn't just start yesterday, even if you just started your short-term rental yesterday. So data exists for travel trends and market trends in your area, okay? Whether you're an Airbnb and comparing yourself to this time last year, or properties similar to yours this time last year, or you have a deeper understanding through a dynamic pricing software, you can see, it's so cool. You can see last year this exact same time where your occupancy was for that month ahead. And you can also see, if you were in business using this tool, where you were last year and where you're at now. Why is this important? Well, if you're at 8% occupancy and the market this time last year was at 20%, and at the end it went up to 50%, you know there is plenty of room to grow. And so to hang on to your pricing, maybe even raise your prices, because demand is still there and you have some room to grow. If you're at 20% occupancy and the market only got to 22% occupancy last year, once all the numbers were finally in, you know, you can kind of just chill out and like, don't stress about it. You could maybe send an email out if you have an email list. You could do some boots on the ground efforts to get some more bookings. But when it comes to people just clicking on Airbnb or Vrbo, you're meeting the market, you're matching the market, and there's not much you can do. We do have some markers for you to help you with understanding what to do at the different demand levels.
This tip right here directly correlates back to the beginning when we were talking about panic pricing. When you understand the historical data, it will bring a calmness and a peace and understanding to what happened last year. Is it always going to be identical? No, but it's really, the historicals are going to help shed light on what is most likely going to happen this year. So just want to share that if you are that panic pricing one, this is where you really are going to want to take the time and understand these market trends, these market demands, and the historicals.
So if you're in your software and it's telling you that demand can get up to 75% occupancy or above, this means there's high demand in your market and you really should push your pricing. Don't be the first one booked, because that means you're leaving money on the table, okay? So go ahead, get pricing that really exceeds what your base price is, increase it by 5-10% of what you got last year, especially if that occupancy and that demand is still the same. That is the time to like test your ceiling. If you're between 35% occupancy and 75% occupancy, that's moderate occupancy. This is where you want to stick to your strategy, stick to the rates that are competitive, fair, but don't slash them, because demand is moderate. Yeah, people are coming and they're willing to pay for your place what other people are getting for your place in that area. Now, if your occupancy is going to be 35% or below, this means occupancy and demand is lower. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on, I believe. That does not necessarily mean just to slash your price. Because think about it. If you slash your price, that doesn't mean that people are necessarily going to get off their couch and come stay with you in a low demand season, right? The people that were already coming are still going to pay an appropriate price to come stay with you. You're not going to create demand by slashing your prices. And that mindset shift can also bring a lot of peace and clarity and money to your pocketbook. But having these thresholds, 75 and above, 35 to 75, and 35 and below, we call it our red yellow, green strategy, green being high demand, high occupancy, yellow being moderate, and red being low, can give you an inkling of, okay, where should I be at in my strategy, knowing the occupancy levels are going to get to these different percentage points.
Tip number 4, use minimum night stays strategically. We have coached so many hosts that have set a minimum night stay and they set it and forget it. They have,
And they just kind of pick it.
yeah, they looked at the data once or twice and they saw, oh, my average length of stay is 5 nights, so I'm going to make it 5 nights. Or, oh, I see on the weekends, there are always 3 nights and they make it 3. No one has ever really backed it up with data over the long term for us. So here's what we want to say here. When you are just setting minimum night stays, you are impacting so much your occupancy rate, your calendar efficiency, your search result ranking. We looked at, I think, 2 different hosts' calendars today, and their minimum night stays were blocking it. So it looked like we basically had like 2 potential days that we could book with them because their minimum night stays had blocked.
Because think about it.
All of the options for us.
Like most people who are working, they get Friday and Saturday. They leave Friday, they have Saturday to hang out, and they usually go home Sunday. So that's a 2-night stay over a weekend. Maybe someone's average length of stay is 3 nights, but if you limit everyone to book 3 nights, the Sarah and the Nats who want to get away from the weekend and have a girls' weekend, but we only have 2 nights because we got to get back to work, you will never even pop up in our search ranking. So just as a quick example of how that, and so when you don't pop up in search, Airbnb doesn't like that. So that's how it affects your search ranking.
And also, this moves throughout the season. We completely understand. Let's say you are in an area where in the summer, you can get 5-night bookings, 7-night bookings. It's not saying if you have the minimum nights, you're not going to get those longer ones, okay? But we want you to adjust these throughout the year. We have so many hosts that we talk to. They are constantly, moving the levers here on their minimum night stays. Sometimes we have a lot of hosts that go to 1-night minimum because they want to make sure they're capturing each and every traveler that might be coming through. And again, depending on their area. And we completely understand. We know someone is sitting on the other side of the screen saying their homeowners association, their city regulations might have a minimum night stays. Of course, you have to adhere to those. We don't want you breaking those types of rules if your building, HOA, or city has minimum night stay requirements.
And those minimum night stay requirements, use them strategically. Like we said, that's the tip, right? So if there's like some giant citywide sellout and consistently over the years that you've gotten 3-night stay, or you can clearly see that people are booking 3 nights because you've got that dynamic pricing software, then by all means. But then let's say, it gets closer to the time of your booking and you're not getting a booking, it's okay to drop it down to 2 nights and maybe even raise your rates a little bit, right? Because someone wants the flexibility, they're going to pay for flexibility. That's how you have to start thinking as a short-term rental owner. Tip number 5, build a comp set and build it the right way.
Say it again, because we said this was the tip that they were waiting for. Well, what's a comp set, Sarah?
Okay, so we're going to get into, you tell them. What's a comp set?
It's a competitive set. It is your competitive set of properties that we are going to use to base our pricing strategy.
Yeah.
And you should get excited about this. We do really encourage you. You are going to have to use a tool for this, whether it's Airbnb or PriceLabs.
Or Verbo.
Yeah, but you are going to have to, this is doing some work. And you're also going to have to be really realistic right now because you want to make sure your comp set's accurate. So in your competitive set, you're going to want from about 5 to 9 properties. Again, depending on your area, how much competition there really is, but 5 to 9 properties. And you're going to want to start out with the base properties being very, very similar to you. So same bedroom count, same bathroom count, very like the same amenities that you offer. And that will be about 5 properties. And then to get to that 9, you're going to want to add 1 or 2 properties that are more of a budget friendly. Okay, because what you're taking into account right now is the person shopping for their trip. They're looking at this competition. They're going to look at you and people like you. And then maybe they're going to say, what if we didn't spend as much? What could we get? And then we're also going to want you to put 1 or 2 premium properties. What's another place that maybe has an additional amenity? Maybe they have that hot tub. Maybe they have, maybe you have a shared pool and they have their own pool. So you're going to want to add 1 to 2 premiums. So let's go back. So 5 to 9 properties in your comp set. You're going to have 5 that are similar and very similar to you, 1 or 2 that are budget, 1 or 2 that are premium. Got it? And again, this will change. This also is not set it and forget it because you're going to have competition come and go.
Yeah.
You might add an amenity.
They might
add an amenity. So this is where you really want to stay on top of your competition.
Yes. So go back in there often, click around, make sure, are they blocking off a bunch of nights? Are they still appropriate? Because your pricing, your strategy, and this is where I told you at the beginning, most hosts get wrong. They like pick the nearest properties to their property. And it's like, well, they have 2 more bathrooms than you do, or they have a rooftop pool and you don't, you know what I mean? So just be dialed in there.
Of your true, like, what is the competition? And here's what you're going to want to analyze though once you pull together your
Yeah, and so
concept.
you might want to make a spreadsheet for this unless you're using a software that includes it in the software. But what is their pricing strategy? Where are their rates at on the weekends, weekdays? Do they have any minimum night settings? How are their photos? What are guests saying in their reviews that they like about the property? What are they saying that they don't like about the property? Because then you can go on your competitors and say, ooh, my competitors, all their reviews of the beds aren't that great. You know what? I'm actually going to finally take the plunge and get a really amazing mattress, right? Or incredible sheets, or all of the above. Or maybe they have dings about how their location is noisy. So then, and you're in a quiet street. So have that be a part of your title or your listing description, like above the fold.
You want to highlight what you're doing better than them. With your competitive set, you can take a look at how they're pricing their cleaning. You can take a look at what they are doing, like during those busier seasons, during the slower seasons. You can watch and look at the way that they're adjusting their pricing.
Tip number 6, when you're losing to the market, have you really, like really tried everything?
AKA, this is what we hear immediately. I've dropped my price and I'm still not getting booking. Please.
Or my bookings are down, so it must be my rate.
That is like a knee-jerk first decision. And that's why we're so glad you're here watching this video. Let us help you. That should not be your first response to an empty calendar. That's what panicked pricing is just lowering the rate. Sarah's going to go through a checklist here of like, what are some other things that you can try instead of just lower rate as your pricing strategy?
I'll tell you, when demand isn't high and your bookings are low, and the first thing is panic and you want to lower your rates, this is actually the time where hosts need to take a hard look in the mirror, because this is what we see. You guys, we help hundreds of hosts inside of our private membership. A lot of you email us, like we have a lot of conversations with hosts.
Sometimes you're just so close to your listing. We look at listing after listing every day, and it's very clear a few levers that they could pull. And so that's where we want to help you, because you're just too close to it.
You're too close to it. Because number one, how are your photos? They might be, you may have hired a professional. Okay. So you took that advice from us several videos ago, but they aren't that good still, right? That photographer was to one of our hosts that today said artsy fartsy, because she's got this big property and it's beautiful, but all the shots are like really artistic and a lot of them are like close up. So if you think you're planning for a party of 8 to 10 people that are traveling to this destination, where are we going to hang out in the living room? What is the cooking going to be like in the kitchen? What is it like to hang out outside? And if you can't see that picture, if you can envision that when you're looking at your listing, they might pass by you and go to your competitor, especially when occupancy is low and demand is low, right? It's the supply and demand. There's plenty of supply. So you'll be the last one picked. Are your calendar settings too restrictive? Did you forget from your high occupancy time where you're demanding people stay a 3-night weekend, and now you're getting to your shoulder season or your slower season, you forgot to change the setting and you're not popping up, or people can't get a 3-night weekend to come stay with you, or you're charging for extra people over 2 people, over 3 people, and now your price is really getting inflated. All of these things you can adjust before you go ahead and just lower your rate. Because remember, lowering your rate doesn't all of a sudden just create demand.
And also, like, look at your listing description, look at your amenities, and this is going to be the real hard truth. Look in the mirror. And your competitive set, are you really even competitive? Would you choose you
Over them?
When is the last time you went as a traveler to the Airbnb app and just looked at, like, if you were coming to your town, where do you line up? It's crazy to me when I go on the app to look at places, like, some of the stuff just has not been updated since they listed it, and I can see why they're on the 14th, 15th page.
Tip number 7 is that most hosts don't actually know what winning actually looks like. Okay, and we could probably honestly, Annette was yelling at me before we turned the camera on, do a whole video on this tip, but I'm gonna leave it here with you today to just let it noodle in your brain.
What? There's more videos coming.
You gotta come back and hang out with us. Yeah. Occupancy alone does not tell you if you're winning in your market. Okay, because you could have high occupancy and a really low rate and not make as much revenue as the market has. Or you could have a really high rate, lower occupancy, and your house is not getting used as much, but you're still not bringing in as much revenue as the market is as a whole. When you have a mixed strategy, when you have a good comp set, when you have good calendar management, you know, these minimum length stays in place that we were just talking about, when all of that is balanced and strategic,
Harmony.
That is how you win the market. We even have a little graph for you that we're going to throw up here on the screen. This metric is called RevPAN, and it's essentially a combination of your occupancy and your average daily rate. But let's just show you what it looks like in a graph form. We have 3 different hosts in this graph. We have host A. She loves high occupancy, but you can see her RevPAN was $270 a night. We have host B, who has lower occupancy but higher average daily rate. That's what ADR stands for. And his revenue per available night was $270. So him and host A are kind of like making the same. But then we have host C. You can see her average daily rate of $450 is somewhere between host A and host B. Her occupancy is somewhere between host A and host B, but she made more per available night. And that is the gift that we want to leave you with in this video, is that it is a balance, and you can't just look at these metrics individually. You really have to combine them to see if you're winning.
I'm going to leave you with a little TFV pro tip.
Bonus!
We want you to focus your energy on your peak season. 90% of this needs to be focused there when you're going to be making the money, okay? We see so many hosts stress out, nervous, trying to drop their prices, all this like hurried, anxious, busy work in their slow season, where you could take that time to prep and make sure you're maximizing your pricing for your peak season. Do those deep cleans, do that maintenance, hire some new team members, retrain your turnover team. So focus on your peak season and your peak season pricing. So in your slow season, you can be prepping for it.
So tell us in the comments, which tip are you going to dive into first, or which tip exposed you and you want to tighten it up? And if you want to keep this pricing learning going, we have a video all about PriceLabs for beginners, because it is the dynamic pricing software that we use here at Thanks for Visiting. We got a link in the show notes if you want to check it out yourself. And with that, I am Sarah Karakayan.
I'm Annette Grant, and together we are
Thanks for visiting.